How to go. Is this good like that?
Yep.
All right.
Do I need to refresh in order?
Okay. Well, I hope this is working. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today for this Q&A and also for the contest. So we're just going to do a very quick sound check to make sure that our whole setting is working well. So.
Can you hear us well on the headphones?
Yep.
Yep. All right.
Awesome.
Good.
So let me introduce you. Well, there's Yannick and I, of course, but there's also Kayla, who's working behind the camera. And Kayla is an opera singer who sang in the choirs for the recording of Shards of Light. And come a little closer here. So yeah, Kayla is going to help us today and ask the questions, or rather, the questions that you guys are asking. She will repeat them to us so we know what's going on.
So thank you for joining.
Yes. So for the contest, Yannick, why don't you explain a little bit how this is going to work?
Okay. The contest is going to be really cool. So what we've decided to do is we have a whole list of questions to ask. Some questions are a little bit easier and some are a little bit trickier. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of questions we get. And also the other thing is some questions are about lyrics. Some questions are about band members and some questions are about just the band activities and stuff like that in general. So it'll be interesting to see how people do on that. How we will be grading that is, of course, the first people that answer that are the quickest get more points than those that take more time to go and do research and check and provide the answer. So be quick, but be correct.
You have until the end of the live stream to provide all your answers. And for those of you who do not have a YouTube account, we will also take messages through Facebook. So if you send us messages through Facebook, we will announce the winners tomorrow. Did you say that?
Yep, we'll announce tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, so that gives us time to look at all your answers and count all the points. So we have very cool prizes, a lot of items that are from the recording of Shards of Light. So there are some strings, violin strings, bass strings, and guitar strings, some drum skins that were signed, and sticks, yes.
Yeah, and signed T-shirts, CDs,
yeah.
Fridge magnets that we've just recently gotten.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. What is our first question?
All right. Our first question is from Benjamin Schmeisser. I personally prefer metal concerts at night and inside. It seems odd to see metal in the sun during the day. What challenges do you face when performing outdoors and in the sun? Is it easier or more difficult than indoors?
Well, I'm going to start on that one. So personally, I will admit I also prefer to perform at night. I don't know why. There's something about
the darkness.
I don't know, but I guess it's just as performers, you always perform at night. That's the thing. So I guess it just feels more special. Of course, there's a big energy during the day, and like in a festival or things like that. But if I have the choice, I prefer at night. The challenges of outside concerts. So there's both elements. The fact that it's something you can't. Not preview, but you can't, you don't know how it's going to be. Sorry for my English. So basically, like if it's very, very windy or it's raining, and most often we have like a roof over, so it's not so bad. But if it's raining like cats and dogs, then it sometimes gets on the stage, it gets on your instrument, and for a violin, it kind of sucks. Or like direct sun is not very good either for any instrument. So that's the kind of stuff that outside concerts, or if it's really cold, or like I was talking about the wind, at some point my hair went under my bow. You're playing, there's absolutely no sound because your hair is right under. So it's this kind of little stupid thing that happens when you can't control everything. But at the same time, playing and singing with the wind in your face is kind of amazing. So there's, gives and takes. Yannick?
Yeah, I guess some of the challenges that we faced that I remember, for example, we played at a festival in India at Bangalore in 2012, and it was very hot and very humid. So the guitarists had to leave their instruments outside of the hotel room, like outside in the heat and humidity for some time to get acclimated. Tuning is a little bit harder to keep in line. And it's the same for drum heads, right? I mean, I've done a video recording for a band at one point. It was probably about 35 to 40 Celsius on a summer's day. And there was a condensation buildup inside the shells. And of course, that was a video recording, so the tuning didn't matter as much. But if there were microphones on that, it would have sounded awful, right? So I think the challenges, and same thing for the cold, right? So, I mean, if it's too hot or too cold, you get similar challenges, you know? So when we did the recording of the Empire of Loss video, it was probably about minus 15 Celsius. For that recording, so you know, we're happy we weren't recording the album in that temperature. So
yeah, you're happy you don't hear the real violin, of course. You can see a little bit of steam coming when we're talking or singing, so that gives you an idea on that video. Good.
Next question. Christopher Powers says, guys, is there any plans for another tour in the near future? Saw you guys, epic show.
Yeah, I think the times are a little tricky right now. I think a lot of tours are getting canceled, and the ones that are, I guess, planned somewhat in the future it's the plans for those are still unknown, right? So we don't know if those are going to be canceled or not. So this is a tricky time for doing tours, and that's why we do Q&A sessions and release playthrough videos and stuff like that. So I mean, we're still doing our best to be able to book shows, but it'll probably be in a while. It's not going to be for next week, obviously. Yeah.
I think it's time for a contest question. What do you think?
All right. Oh, I got the first question, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is going to be a question for lyrics. So to answer the question, just put a comment answering the question in the YouTube live feed. It's as simple as that. And of course, for us to know, who's answering the question, of course, you got to be logged into YouTube, right? So,
or as we said, we also take Facebook messages.
Oh yeah, you can send Facebook messages as well. All right. So this will be one of the easier questions. So it's about lyrics. So what are the next 4 words? You have endured disheartening sorrow, are headed for the gallows. A kingdom can be yours. And what are the next 4 words? So that is the first contest question, and we'll call that an easy one. All right. So while people are answering, I guess we can move on to the next Q&A question.
You're there saying it's an easy one. Some people might be like, what the hell? This is super hard.
So some of the lyrics are actually online in our YouTube videos. So if you don't know and you don't have our 24-page booklet with all the lyrics, you can still find it online on YouTube. And check in the video. The lyrics are actually there. So hopefully a few of you will be able to get that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Let's go to the next one.
We have someone in the YouTube chat. Maria Ruminoff, Kenna Roth asks, do you guys consider to make a conceptual album?
I'll take that one. So the first album we did, We Are But Human, was a story, actually. So you would follow the character throughout his entire journey. That was also written in his journal. Basically, it was, let's be honest, kind of a window on humanity. So that was our first album. Our second album, we had pretty much all the songs could pertain to survival. And the third album, Shards of Light, was all about finding light. So the second and third album were not as story as much, so it was more individual stories, but the first was definitely like a big story. I think we kind of prefer to stick to, yes, a concept for the entire album, but without necessarily joining, making a whole, like a story like an opera or something like that, or musical theater or whatever. So yeah, we like to keep a concept for the whole album, though. So.
Yeah, and I guess in some cases, maybe an additional comment to that is sometimes we start writing the lyrics. Often we start writing the lyrics before having the official album title. So we start writing and we say, what do we want to talk about? And once we have maybe 2 or 3 songs written, then we start thinking about an album title and say, hey, what is in common with the lyrics that we've written until now, and where do we want to, go with this? So we just kind of refine it a bit and then take it where we want to take it with the album title. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good question.
Guillermo Rios asks, what made you include a violin in a tech/melodeath band?
Oh, well, that would be thanks to Yannick, actually. So we have I think another question that kind of touches a little bit the same.
I guess we can talk about that, both questions now. And yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the way the band came together first kind of answers that question. So there was a guitarist in Germany who contacted Yannick to start a project, and both were doing quite, a little bit more towards death metal, and a little bit more
in the past, yeah.
In the past, yeah. And they started working together. They also were decided to work with a bassist from Italy, so you already have like those 3 countries going on. And then when Yannick heard the music, he actually asked me if I would like to sing and maybe add some strings to it. He thought it was very melodic, and that would be a good addition. So I went ahead and tried something, sent it to everybody, and they really liked it. So that's how it started. The thing with the violin, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, maybe the first album, the majority of it had been written before Julie and I joined, in terms of the guitar riffs and the song structures and that. Yeah. I mean, there was a little bit of rework. And I think on the second album, Threads, and on Shards also, we kind of brought that out a little bit more and took it to the next level, incorporating more strings, because then we included the strings in the composition of the songs right from the start, rather than having the song written and then adding strings to the already written songs. So that's why we have, introductions on Empire of Lost with, choirs and strings and orchestras and that. And then the music comes in and it's all integrated together, right? And just like the end of that song as well, right? And we have other songs like that too. So I think it's changed with the years, but that's how it actually got started to get the violin in the music. Was once I heard the music for the first album and thought, hey, we could get Julie singing on this and violin, and then we took it to the next level afterwards. So
there's also the part where I love both singing and viola, violin, strings. So for me, it's really hard to join a project just doing one of the two. I would feel like incomplete a little bit. It's really part of part of who I am. So I guess that's one of the reasons as well. So.
Is it time for a contest question?
Oh, okay. That's my turn. We have them written because, memory. I can memorize lyrics other than that. So, okay, question number 2. I hope you guys are ready. This one. What has Yannick been known to eat on tour that everyone else finds absolutely disgusting? Like, disgusting. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what people answer.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people know this already. We've made posts on Facebook as a joke about this particular food and had a lot of comments on it. So I know there's people that already know that. Yep. And maybe more particularly from one region in east of Canada, from the province of Quebec, maybe have a slight advantage on that. But yeah, we'll see what we get in terms of answers for that.
I think it will be as entertaining to read.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so next question. Yeah.
Next question. Man, I feel like I need to apologize if I get anybody's name wrong. I'm so sorry.
No, that's good.
Ishan Kaji asks, do you guys find any difference in bass sound for live as studio bassist is Steve DiGiorgio?
He's asking for sound. Is that it?
I think between studio stuff and live stuff.
Okay, in
Yeah,
terms of
bass
sound.
Well, that's your specialty, Yannick. So.
Yeah, so maybe I can comment on that. So in the studio, first of all, working with Steve is crazy awesome. We work together on the bass tone to try to get something that is really cool, and we don't argue much. We're pretty much have the same opinions on where to go, which is really great. And we're both very flexible with tones and that, so we're able to try different basses, try different settings. We actually use the Dark Glass B7K on the album with an EBS multi-comp pedal. And so that is actually what you hear on the album is, I would say, probably 90% from those two pedals. So we try different basses, try different settings on, for gain and EQ and all that. And I think for live, we've actually been fairly close to that. So as you know, Steve, who plays in Testament, is often on the road. So we need to have someone play bass for the Gone in April shows. And I think every single Gone in April show that we've had until now has been with the Dark Glass B7K and maybe a compression pedal in front of that. So we pretty much get similar bass tones. I don't think there's a particular, strategy in the studio that is different than live. I would say they're pretty much the same. Of course, we need to make adjustments because everyone's playing is a little bit different. Steve is very... the attack on the strings is very intense. He's very aggressive on the bass, which gives really amazing tone. And other bassists sometimes might not go as strong as he does. So we just need to make adjustments in EQ and in compression and that to try to get a similar tone. So I guess the mentality is pretty much the same in the strategy for both live and for the studio. Yeah.
That was a good question.
Yeah, very good.
I'm glad you could answer that. Yannick is a tech one, so.
Julie, can you sing growls?
I wish, but no. The thing is, I'll be very honest. It's really hard to maintain a good level on two instruments. So already being a professional violinist, violist, and a professional singer requires all the time I can find. Well, this and the band. So if I was to learn how to growl, then it would be like, there's a lot of things that are very similar, like I have a lot of friends with whom I had this discussion because singers were kind of, we love everything to talk about technique. We just love it. It's like, oh, how do you breathe? Like, what's the difference? And so we often exchange about it. I feel like I would have already an advance knowing like how to breathe well and everything. And it would be finding the right technique. But it's really a question of time. And also, and again, I'll be very honest, there's always a trial period. So in anything you do when you're learning something new, you're not going to be great at it at the beginning. And right now I can't really, at this time, I can't really go through a period where, let's say, I damage a little bit my voice, even if it's not something that will last. If it's just like being sore, and I can't really do that right now when I need my voice to be, perfect all the time. So, so there's a little bit of this. I'm kind of afraid of that period where I know I'm not going to do it right. So I think if I ever decide to do the leap, I would actually have a very good teacher with me, a growler that I trust, that I know his technique is like really strong. And then, that would be when I would jump. But for now, not yet.
Yeah, so I guess we leave that to the people that have been doing that for quite some time, right? So Aaron,
way better than me.
So Aaron has been doing death vocals for several years. He came to record with his band in our studio here, and when I heard him, I thought, wow, that I really like his voice. we asked him if he was interested in coming to work with Gone in April, and so he did, and we really like his voice, and of course he's got the right techniques, and has several years of experience with that. And on tour, he wasn't available to come with us for the entire 4 weeks. So we had Sébastien Croteau come with us. And of course, he also is an awesome death vocalist. So we had that covered pretty well. So we prefer to leave that to the pros that have been doing that for several years. All right.
Ishan Kaji asks, so when are you guys going to release your new album?
Oh, wow.
Well, we just released Shards of Light in September, so we are with the situation right now. We're doing like a lot of bands, I guess, not staying idle and working hard. So we already started composition for the next album, even if the one we just the one we just put out is pretty still fresh. But we did start in terms of dates. We don't have anything set in stone yet because it's very early in the process. I would say.
Yeah, I would say probably in at least a year and a half to 2 maybe years, maybe in that kind of ballpark. I would say so, something like that, probably in that vicinity. Yeah, yeah.
Daniel Alexander asks, what is the story behind Gone in April? Where are you from and what are your roots as artists? I've been curious about this since I saw you in Korpiklani and, oh no.
Eluveti.
Yes, you blew me away.
All right, I guess I'll take the beginning of that, and then you can take the other. So we talked a little bit about that, earlier. Someone answered that question from someone else's question. We had guitars from Germany, Felix, that contacted me, and Kiko for bass from Italy. So we came from different parts of the world. And I guess the rest we've talked about that a few minutes ago, but got Julie involved with it. So I won't go further on that, but maybe Julie can comment on the band name since we haven't talked about that yet. So
okay, so we had multiple questions about where the name is from. So when we started, as we said, with Felix, which was the guitarist from Germany, the concept, the whole album, the concept was a soldier that leaves for the Crusades. So if some of you are a little familiar with the Crusades, there was a call to arms, and a lot of people answered that call and felt that they were, when you join a cause, the reason is you believe in it and you feel like it's the thing to do. So that soldier starts and joins the Crusades, and throughout everything, I mean, it's a war, right? So there's never any war that is pretty. So through everything, you see how he changes and how his way of thinking changes, and he sees the impact, and so we follow him through everything. So he, as I mentioned before, he writes his story and his thoughts in his journal. And the last entry in the journal is the last day of April. And then that is when there's no more entries. So as you can guess, he dies there. So we base the name of the band on that story. So Gone in April.
Yeah.
Contest question?
Okay, Yannick.
Okay, all right, my turn now. All right, so Steve has several animals. He has dogs, cats, horses, and what other type of animal? So we posted Steve in his element with Testament, maybe about a few weeks ago. And of course, the answer is in there. And if you know anything about Steve and follow his page, you will have this answer pretty quickly. So good luck.
You're almost getting the answer, Yannick.
Trying to make it easy in time for the hard ones.
Oh, okay.
Ishan asks, I hope to see some more bass playthrough of Shards of Light.
Yes, actually, I can answer that question. We're actually working on one right now. It is about 90% completed, and if you seen what we've done with the previous album is there's always several playthroughs of each instrument, and we plan on absolutely continuing that. Of course, we released the first drum playthrough a few weeks ago. The next one will be a bass playthrough. And so we're almost done with that one. We're waiting to get the finishing touches on it, and that will be ready to go. And we're going to keep working on guitar playthroughs and on the next bass playthroughs and drum playthroughs on that. So absolutely, just keep an eye for it. And we have several coming your way. Yeah.
We're also thinking about doing some violin playthroughs if there's some people interested in that. So.
Maria Rumanoff Kenna Roth asks, what is your favorite metal album?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
For me, I don't know. There's several albums. I'm still pretty old school. So if we're driving somewhere, I actually have my Case Logic filled with CDs because I've never taken the time to put all of them in MP3s on my phone. But I guess I could go through a few CDs that I have in there. I mean, I have definitely, Death, Cynic, Dimmu Borgir, Iron Maiden, Anthrax. I actually have other music that is not metal, such as like Leon Redbone, which is one of my favorite artists also.
The contrast.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Maiden, I'm looking some of the CDs that I have there. Some Slayer also. I mean, a lot of different types of music, In Flames. I mean, you name it. I mean, we listen to a lot of different things. And that's what I guess makes the sound of Gone in April the way it is, because we listen to a lot of different things.
But you didn't answer the question.
The favorite album. Gosh,
You're pedaling
yeah,
there.
it's hard. It's really hard. So I'll just leave it at that and say that it would probably be among CDs that is by Death, Cynic, Dimmu Borgir, and bands like that, I would say, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. I think, just as Yannick, it's a very hard question. I mean, the reason we do metal is because we love metal. So obviously we listen to a ton of metal and we like a lot. I think for me, that would be Wishmaster from Nightwish. Because it's in the early days, I think, that I was starting to listen to metal when I was listening to mostly, I think, Sonata Arctica and Nightwish. And yeah, so for me, more symphonic metal, I would say at that time. Now I listen pretty much every type of metal. But yeah, so there's definitely some very good epic albums out there that I like. And I would also say, if I can have another one, Helvetios from Helveti is another one that I like a lot.
So now
I had more time to think about it while
yeah,
you were
yeah.
pedaling.
Well, it's interesting because now, based on Julie's answer and my answer, you know where the influences on the album come from, right? So, all right.
The folky part and the more death metal part.
Maybe another hard one. Which song is the best song from Shards of Light for both of you? Question mark.
For both. Okay.
Okay. So for both of you, mine is. Oh wait, it's leaving. Mine is Power to Heal.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. We actually love to know which songs you guys like the most. We do pay attention to all these things when we compose. So yeah, as you know, we have so many different genres on the album that are mixed together. So yeah, whenever you want to tell us about your favorite songs, go ahead.
I guess how I would answer that in terms of my favorite song, I guess how we approach composition is, we'll say, hey, we never did something like this, or we never took it in this direction. So why don't we do that? And then we take a song in that direction, and then we work on it. And then for another song, we say, hey, you know what? We haven't done something like this. I'd really like to do something like this. And then we do that, and we continue. and every song kind of has a little bit of something that we've never done and have always wanted to do. So, I mean, you've mentioned the person that asked the question, the, you know, Power to Heal. I love that song. The center or the middle part of that song, the very quiet part with different meter key changes and stuff like that, with clean guitars, bass, and drums, kind of more quiet. That was something that I guess we hadn't really done with Gone in April yet, with a very kind of aggressive, melodic, technical death kind of guitar riffing and aggressive drumming in that. So you mentioned that one in particular. So, I mean, that was the part that, you know, I thought, hey, we never have done something like this in the middle part, so let's kind of integrate that in the song. But live, they're all, we make the songs fun to play for us, right? So when we get to a song, when we're playing live or in the studio, it's like, oh yeah, that's the one with this, or that's the one with that, you know. So they're all a lot of fun to play, and you know, it's like if you ask someone, you know, which out of your kids, which one is the one that you love the most? Well, you can't really answer the
or you're
question,
not supposed to.
or if you know the answer, you don't want to answer, right? But I would say that it's probably, we make each song interesting for us and fun to play so that we enjoy, you know, ourselves live. Yeah.
I think for me, there's, so it's hard because in Shards of Light, there's an expression in French, like you pull your end of the blanket. So I pulled my end of the blanket often in Shards of Light in terms of, I did a lot of things that I wanted to do in this album. So I wanted to write a Baroque solo violin song, well, piece, where we would transform into a metal song, and that's If You Join Me. Sorry. So I've been playing Baroque violin in the past, and it's one of my loves. So If You Join Me was really like my first time composing we call it pastiche, like it's like written in the in the same way that it would be at the time. So it's not like a copy, but it's in the same idea, basically. So you can really hear some people ask me, like, did you, in the solo, is it Vivaldi? But it's not, but it's composed with the same methods, the same tools. So for me, If You Join Me was really a dream come true, because that was an idea I had for years and years. So I have a special love for that one. I think also everybody came to that song because the first thing I did is I composed a violin, and all the other musicians started adding their own on it, and everybody added something so virtuoso.
I don't know, but
In
I think they'll get the
English.
point though. Virtuoso, I don't know.
Oh man, somebody type it. Virtuosistic. Come on, Kayla.
Is that what you're going for?
What?
Virtuosic?
Yes. Thank you. No pressure, you know. Yes. So everybody came up with some awesome parts, and it just made it like richer and richer, and yeah, like at the end everybody goes crazy. The bass goes, yeah. It's to me that I think that's the one that really reached me. But also, as I said, I was able to do a lot of what I wanted. So of what I wanted to do for a while. So there's a ton of choirs and. Just having all those singers together producing such a gorgeous sound, and the orchestrations and everything. So to me, that was a little special as well. But yeah, I think my favorite child would be If You Join Me.
All right, is it time for another contest question, I guess?
Oh, yeah, that's the dire one.
All right, so
That's mine.
Actually, that's yours. Yep,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so to which disease is the song Empire? Oh, sorry, I didn't say. Question four. Sorry about that. To which disease is the song Empire of Loss referring to?
All right, you put your answers again in the YouTube live chat. You can put the, all right, it looks like a lot of people are answering. That's great.
Wow. Good.
I'm anxious to see the answers of
I know.
question 2. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Or even question 3.
Yeah.
What
Question
animal?
3 also. Yeah. Yeah. All right. The answer is not elephants. All right.
Well, once again, thank you so much, guys, for being here with us today. I hope that the day is just as gorgeous at home where you are.
All right. Next question.
Next question. Masios R666 asks, what do you think of the future of metal, as unfortunately it seems that other genres get more support from the media?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind with that, I think metal fans, they're very loyal and they tend to stick with metal, at least from what I've experienced. People that started with metal tend to listen to that style of music for a very long time, and they get other people liking metal also. So it seems that the community seems to grow and grow and grow. So yeah, I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind. And of course, there's more, maybe visibility or media coverage with pop music. But considering metal doesn't have maybe as much, I think we're doing pretty well. And of course, I mean, there's always additional things that can be done to try to push it more. And I think every metal band tries to push the limits for that. But I think considering that the community keeps growing, I think I feel pretty good about it myself.
Yeah, I really support everything Yannick said, in the sense that even what we experience, our fans are awesome. Our fans are the best. I mean, we're so lucky. You guys are always there. You come to show, and a lot of you, will support us buying merch, because as you all know, well, you need to put some gas in that in that RV or van or whatever, that we're driving, or things like that. And you guys make this happen. You buy the ticket to come see us. You buy the album. So the way I see it, metalheads are so passionate about the art, about what we're doing. It's not just music to us. It's I know it sounds so corny. It's a way of life, but
I think maybe
I think we all have it so much to heart that I don't think we will ever let it die.
Yeah,
so
I think maybe an additional comment that you mentioned here about passion, right? So I think when I think of metalheads, I think of people listening to the music, not just hearing it as background music. I mean, I'm not saying that metalheads never have it as background music to, when they're doing other stuff, but they're very passionate about the bands. They know the albums, they know the songs, they know the lyrics. They're interested in the musicianship, not only the chorus melody or something like that. I mean, I think passion, brings it home. I think that's a good answer.
I don't think we will ever let it die.
Yeah. All right.
Any plans for releasing bass and guitar tablature?
Ooh.
Oh, tabs. Actually, that's interesting. Maybe I can comment on that one. So when we did threads as well as shards of light, in order to communicate between, the musicians, there were tabs of some parts that were written. We've kind of thought about maybe releasing some of those, materials, but we haven't taken it a step further yet. We're more working on the playthroughs themselves to try to release the visuals for you to get, a close-up on the instrument to really see all the details. But tabs could be an interesting aspect to, item to release as well. So that's a cool question. So thank you for asking that, and we'll give that more thought. Yeah, thank you.
Question for Yannick from Arnaud de France, maybe. Your drum set position don't change a lot since
Quo Vadis? Yes.
Quo Vadis period. Did you find early your final drum kit position?
Yeah, that is true. My drum kit setup has hardly changed over, I think, the past probably more than 10 years. I would say it's been the same or very close. So the four toms, I guess the double bass and four toms, is probably an aspect that people have commented on in the past. I like to do tom rolls from tom 1 to tom 4. That's something I enjoy doing, which I've probably gotten influenced by, Dave Lombardo and Gene Hoglan and other drummers as well. So that is, I guess, a part of the signature kit, that getting rid of a tom, there are certain fills that I do from that you've probably seen in some playthroughs that, I go from tom 1 to the mini China, to the next stack, to tom 2, to tom 3, then to the next stack, and then to the ride, and then finishing off with the cymbals. So there are very specific fills or styles or types of fills that I think if I would take, a tom away, or if I would take a stack away, there's certain types of, either drum beats or fills that I like to do with paradiddles and that might not be, in my opinion, not as complete. So, just because of the style that I have of playing, it's the parts that I like to have. And a lot of the setup has been designed for a studio. So I'm a studio engineer, and when I record the drums, in the case, I'll give you the information on my drum kit. I like to have it symmetric. So if I have, for example, the 2 toms on the left and 2 toms on the right, that is symmetric. I have, of course, the left and the right overhead, so that the majority of, no matter what drum kit you're recording, you have a left and a right overhead. But for example, I have the ride on the right, and I have the mini China on the left, and I have the stacks in the center. Well, I have a left condenser mic, a right condenser mic, and the center condenser mic that are all matched, right? So they're the same type of microphone with the same frequency characteristics. So I think I try to keep everything as symmetric as possible to help with the mixing. And I think, having, the kit symmetric and the cymbals very high, that's something I've learned from a sound engineer called Pierre Hemial that we worked with back in late 1990s and early 2000s. And of course, working with Jim Morris and Tom Morris from Morris Sound also have supported that, to try to keep the cymbals as high as possible, to not have cymbal bleed into the tom mics, right? So of course, you have, and I'm getting a little bit technical here, but you'll have gates on the toms that after you hit the tom, the microphone will shut off. So if you hit a cymbal, it might not go right into the tom mic. But if you hit a cymbal, and right after you hit a cymbal, you do a tom roll, well, when you hit the tom, the microphone is going to open up, and the crash that is still resonating will go into that mic. And then you'll have cymbal bleed into the tom mic, right? So increasing the distance helps reduce bleed a lot. And that's why I've had the cymbals so high since probably, late 1990s or early 2000s. So I guess that's probably how I would describe it. So no, I haven't changed it much. It's been the same for a while. I like the fact that it's symmetric and everything seems to work well. So I might change a type of crash or a type of China, but usually the positioning of it stays pretty much the same.
So the reason I was laughing is because we tried many, many times, especially Marc-André, our guitarist, tried very, very often to leave some pieces of the drum kit behind.
Let's forget this part behind. I have less gear to haul.
Yeah, you don't need all these toms. You don't need 2 bass drums. So basically, because we have a very good team and everybody is helping to carry everything, which is the drums as well, and helping to put them up. So that's there's a lot of jokes that are coming through with that.
So good question. That was a good question. Yeah.
Next one is from Maria, who asked a question earlier. Which song do you think is the weakest of your discography?
Oh, okay.
Ooh, that's.
I guess the first thought that comes to mind is not really a particular song, but I would say once we started writing for Threads, once Felix had left the band and Kiko wasn't so available also, and we started building, a new lineup, and got Marc-André on guitars for Threads and had Aaron on vocals and Steve on bass. We felt that, at least my thought, and Julie can comment on that afterwards, is that I would say before Threads would probably be like basically the first album, We Are But Human, I would say is probably, in my opinion, I don't know if I would say weaker, but not in the direction that I, prefer, which is the reason that once, some of the members from the first album left, Julie and I really put, a custom team together with musicians of the style that we really liked. So I would say probably, in my opinion, I would say We Are But Human is less the direction that I would like to take. So
yeah, I think like any band, like you start somewhere and then you just see that it's not necessarily. I mean, you have to try things, right? So I think, and often, so often when the members change or thing like that, and then you find, like Yannick often says, you find your recipe. And I think the first album, we were still searching for a recipe a bit. So.
I will say we got great reviews on the first album, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that necessarily it's weaker, but it might not be in the style that we've preferred to continue, which is the reason we made those changes with Threads and with Shards of Light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Should we do a contest question?
Yes,
Yeah,
and after
okay.
that, I think we still have a lot of questions that were asked prior to the
Yes.
All right.
prior to the
So,
Q&A.
next question 5, which is somewhat of a trick question. So we'll see how well people know this. At shows, which musician always ends up dealing with the setup of the merch and the tuning of the drums? So that is question 5. So again, put your answers in the live chat. And already some people answering. So yeah, will be interesting.
We've been lucky. We've been lucky having a lot of friends helping with merch. But there's always one musician that is tuning the drums and taking care of merch.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Ed Burkha, to Julie, how do you deal with the violin parts where you are singing at the same time in a live show?
Okay, so yes, as you all know, I like luscious orchestrations as an orchestra musician. So I like to make the album as rich as possible, and I become my own orchestra very often. It's not always easy to have to have an orchestra that will just come in the studio and record. I mean, it's being musicians, we're always very fair to other musicians, so we want to pay them what they're really worth. And when you do that, well, you quickly see that you can't hire a full orchestra and finish the album and everything unless you're further. Let's just say that. Then we don't have the funds now to do that. Maybe one day, I really hope so. But for now, I transform myself into a string orchestra and I record violin and viola. So basically, I'll be in front of the mic recording at least 3 times the same thing. So to build the orchestra, that's kind of how I do that. In orchestra, you have a violin 1 part, a violin 2, you have the viola, the cello, and the bass. I do not play cello and bass, so for this, we hire some cool musicians. But for violin, since I said, there's basically 3 parts that I can take care of myself, violin 1, violin 2, and viola. Not all our songs are built that way, but whenever you hear like very orchestrated parts, that's often how they're built. So for each part, I triple. So I'll record like 3 takes of violin 1, 3 takes of violin 2, 3 takes of viola. And on top of that, sometimes I will sing on top. Well, often I'll sing as well. So the way it works for shows, I really hate to be idle on the stage. I prefer to be singing or playing. I'm not too crazy about just staying there. I mean, it's getting getting the crowd going, but I like to be playing or singing, basically. So in sections where I'm not singing, I'm usually playing. The way this works is I'm going to figure out, so because I write for my own instruments, it's easier. I will always listen for the one, or think about which line is the most front, where the melody lies. So basically, if I'm not doing anything, like I'm not singing a lead or something like that, then I'll double what like the most important line of the orchestra, if on the violin, or if I'm singing, of course. I mean, some people are really cool about doing two things at the same time, but I'm not that cool. So I haven't found how to sing and play at the same time very efficiently. Something that's tricky. So then if I'm singing, it's most likely because there's orchestra only and not like a lead on the violin. So then it's going to be samples that are in the background for the shows, for the orchestra, for that spot. Yeah.
That Cologne guy, for me, Yannick is one of the top 5 metal drummers in the world. I love the playthrough on Empire of Loss. What were some of the challenges that he faced with the location?
Oh, okay. Well, first, thank you for the compliment. That's very nice. So thank you very much. The Empire Lost video, I would say that's probably one of the videos that I enjoyed the most. I enjoy videos that give us a challenge and where we learn a lot. And I think the challenges we had with that particular location is once we had found it, it was in Detroit. It was a cathedral, I guess, or a church. Well, actually, it wasn't a cathedral. It was just
really
a church, a really big
Really
church,
big.
very nice church. It was actually, I don't think that was a contest question, so I guess I can say this. There was a scene in the Transformers movie, actually, that we learned later that was actually filmed there. So if you look at a Transformers movie, I think Aaron had told me was the last one or something like that, anyways, they had that same location. So, but the challenge that we had with that is based on everyone's schedules, which, everyone's very busy in the band. So we got to find, a tight, spot where everyone can actually be available and record this. And that time was January. And that church does not have power. It does not have heat. And there's no plumbing. So we had to figure out a way to be able to record and try to be as comfortable as possible. And I don't know if comfortable is really the right word, because at minus 15, it's kind of tricky to get comfortable. But we had generators to have power for the lights, for recharging batteries. We had propane heaters to, of course, I mean, it's impossible to heat an entire church like that is also in ruins, right? So it doesn't keep the heat as well, as other buildings might. So we had propane heaters that, we'd go close to warm up, and then we'd go back and continue working. And of course, we needed a porta potty outside because there's no plumbing in the building, right? So we're working with very, very cold temperatures. And I still remember at one point I was setting up my drum kit, getting ready for that video inside the church after we had completed the load in. And I was setting up about 10 feet in front of the propane heaters to try to stay warm. My hands were freezing, and I remember Simon was helping setting up the drums, as well as like Julie and Aaron and Steve and Carlos. And at one point I told Simon, all right, well, Thomas, our videographer, he's ready to record you. So, Simon had to go and do quick guitar solos with his fingers absolutely freezing. And it was the same for the drums and same for the bass, right? So the challenges that I had and the violin too. I'm sorry. So to answer the questions, the challenges that I had were the technical challenge of managing that entire production, right? So making sure that we had enough power, that we didn't have any surprises in saying, okay, well, we have one generator down and now we don't have power and we can't continue. So we had backup generators, and we had backup propane tanks for heating. We had security outside just in case, due to the area.
We even had a coffin delivered.
And we even had a coffin delivered that
These
we had
things are so heavy.
to find a way to fit through one single door because the double doors were closed. So it's all these kind of technical aspects of the productions that made it really difficult. But in terms of playing drums, the part that was really tricky is that after the drums were set up, trying to warm up to play at that speed with that type of drumming. And then, of course, what happens is we take a take with that particular angle, And then after that take, we stop for maybe 5 minutes to maybe change another angle of that. So you play drums, you're warmed up, then you end up stopping for 5 to, maybe 10 minutes. Then you play another take, then you stop. So you keep kind of getting warmed up and kind of, relaxed a little bit. So I think in terms of physical requirements, that was kind of tricky also. I guess that probably summarizes it.
In that case, you can really say warmed up and super cold.
yeah, super cold. Yeah. So I guess that one of the fears that I had is we weren't 100% sure how the gear would react, not the drums and the guitars and that, but more the camera gear and the lights in those temperatures, right? So we just had a lot of backups, and we even had a backup day just in case, something bad happened and we needed to readjust and adapt to anything that came our way, right? So just a lot of backup plans and just a lot of planning and having a great team to help us with everything, right? So when we do these videos, they're pretty challenging on everyone. And we look at all the musicians actually participate in these, right? So it's not like we have a crew of like 20 people running around and the musicians are backstage in the green room, eating their meal and having a coffee and going, let me know when you're ready for us, right? I mean, Steve, Simon, Julie, myself, Aaron, Thomas, Lori, Carlos, I mean, everyone that is there, Travis, Joshua, I mean, everyone, et cetera, that I haven't named, is helping and does not stop, right? So we have a great team that is really helpful for stuff like that. So that makes things a lot easier on us and a lot of fun too. So, yeah. Good question.
Bobby Milner says, you guys are heavy for sure having Steve with you. Are you guys fans of his work with Sadist or Death? Do you guys like early 90s death metal?
Okay. So I guess I'll take that that question. Yes, I am a fan of early 90s death metal. Some of my favorite albums and what I grew up listening to in high school were bands like Death, Cynic, Obituary, and that. So a lot of that is I have that in my background, right? And I still listen to a lot of that, right? And still very much enjoy it. How Steve got involved with Gone in April is actually, a cool story.
I think it's also one of our questions, right?
Yeah, which is also one of our questions, yeah. So the first time that I met Steve was in 2003, actually, where it was for a previous band that I was in called Quo Vadis. It was a death metal band from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and the third album that we had, our bassist had left the band, and we were looking for a bassist to play bass on that album. And the guitarist at the time, we were, talking about it and said, hey, I'd really like to get Steve to play bass on our third album of Quo Vadis. And he said he was really a fan of Steve's work on Individual Thought Patterns, because that was, I believe, the first album that Steve did with bass that was fretless. Of course, he played on Human, which I'm a big fan of Individual Thought Patterns, Human, and also Symbolic and the other ones too. But so Steve kind of came on board for that album. And I remember when I actually flew in Montreal and got to the studio when I met Steve for the first time. Super cool guy. And I remember at one point he said, all right, well, I'm just getting something to eat, and do you want to come hear what I've recorded until now? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we go upstairs in the studio and start listening to the stuff, and that completely blew me away. I mean, the composition, the performance, and I guess that's what really got me hooked on fretless bass, and got me much more interested in bass also. It's not that I wasn't interested in bass before, but bass came to the forefront, in my interests, along with, of course, other instruments in a mix. But to me, bass became extremely important. When it came time for Threads, and actually there was another project I did with Steve before then that we had him come to the studio and record bass for that one in 2011. So that kind of put us in contact again. and we never really lost touch. But and then when it came time to do Threads, contacted him, and Julie had talked about it, quite a bit before, and I said, hey, I'd really like to get two things: one fretless bass on Gone in April material, and Steve's composition. So I'd really like to get Steve, part of the team. And, we get along super well with with him. When he comes over, of course, we have our own studio, so he'll stay over for about, 2 weeks to learn the material and record it and do playthroughs and stuff like that. So we get along really well with him. He's part of our family, and so that's how I guess all that got started, and he got involved with Threads, and then of course we wanted him to continue on Shards, and it's just his way of writing, of composing bass lines, and accompanying the guitars and violins, and just the way his brain works with music is just absolutely amazing. I really like his style of writing, and his playing is just crazy good.
He puts the bass to the front. He's not only accompanying. He knows he's a genius, and sometimes he will know when to back and when to accompany, and sometimes he will know when to bring the melody to the bass and bring the spotlight to the bass. And I think
it's always done in a very tasteful way, and at the right spots too. He supports when he needs to, and he comes to the front when he needs to, right? Yeah. And I think there's never really a discussion of, hey, maybe back it down a bit here, or no, can you kind of get it? It's just his way of writing. It just works really well with the Gone in April material and other material from other bands too. So I guess that's why people love his bass playing so much, but that's why we love his bass playing so much too.
Hey, I just realized there was a double question and that asked for roots. So I think we can go through that really fast. So
okay. Mm-hmm.
My roots are mostly classical, folk, medieval. I played a lot of early music, and of course metal. But I mostly grew up in folk and classical, as well as medieval ancient music. So, Yannick, your roots?
Yeah, I guess my roots, as I mentioned before, is kind of more in death metal. So being in high school, I mentioned Death, Obituary, some of the other death metal I listen to nowadays. I mentioned, actually, I didn't mention them, Obscura. I like Obscura a lot. So that type of music, but yeah, my background is pretty much in death metal. I tend to listen to more aggressive music than Julie does. And you probably see that side in the Gone in April stuff. So, and of course, Steve plays all different types of music also, and Marc-André and Simon also. So everyone kind of brings their own flavor, which gives the Gone in April sound.
Here and there, some rock more,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Cool.
All right.
I see some of the answers in the live chat. Yeah, that looks like people know us better than I thought they did. So yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Very cool. Yeah.
Choc de Vent. Does that sound like French, maybe? Where do you find inspiration from most of your lyrics, and when do you feel a song is complete enough to be on an album?
Okay, inspiration for the lyrics. I think, as we discussed, whenever we start writing, we're like, we think of mostly, like I'd say, short stories, or like Yannick is kind of so on the first album, Felix and I were writing the lyrics. For the second album, it was mostly Yannick. I wrote a little bit, and the third album, it was really mixed duty between Yannick and I. So I think. Yeah, you often, like, you have some stuff you want to talk about. I think that's where it starts. There's stuff you just feel like you want to talk about it. So also like short stories that come to you. But Yannick is kind of the king of description. Like, he can describe a moment in I would say like 10 sentences, but it's the same second. He's really good with that. I think my type of lyric, writing a lyric, is a little bit more on the ressenti, is like felt, the way
emotions
things are,
emotions,
feelings. So I approach the actions, or I approach the thoughts a little bit more in the feelings. So I think it's kind of a good way that I think we complete each other very well for that in terms of lyrics. So yeah, that says where we're coming from with the lyrics.
I think maybe I can comment on that for the lyrics. Usually, I guess when I write lyrics, you can read lyrics and know which ones I wrote and which ones Julie wrote, because our writing styles are completely different. Mine is a little bit kind of more, I think, based on technical and describing environments and that, like she mentioned. So something I like to do is if there's a story to tell, often you will notice in the lyrics that I write is the first verse or maybe more just describes the environment and what's going on. So it's kind of like reading a book, right? I mean, the story doesn't start right away. It's like, once upon a time and, And, if we say it's a sunny day, there's, the sun, it's cloudy, and, you start getting into the details of the environment or the room or wherever it is that you are, and then you start getting into the details of the story. So sometimes when I write lyrics or find a topic for that, I'll think, okay, well, what would be an interesting story? And sometimes what is something that we haven't really talked about yet, or a topic that could be kind of neat to cover. The Will to End a Life, for example, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be interesting to describe what goes on through a pilot's head after he gets hit by enemy fire at war, and about the time where his aircraft hits the ground, right? So what goes on in his mind as the aircraft is spiraling down, right? It's sometimes writing lyrics for a whole song in reality is describing a moment that will be not even a minute, right? Or in some cases will be 5 seconds. Relentless, for example, which was on Threads of Existence, the schedule for that album was pretty tight. And when you're writing lyrics, on a very aggressive schedule, sometimes, you think, okay, what am I going to write about that's different than the other ones? And at one point I thought, you know what, we're kind of like workaholics and work like crazy, and we're not stopping. So I'm going to write about workaholics that work like crazy. And that, so I found a way again to describe the environment and describe what's going on in the head of the people that, work endless hours on a project, and maybe do, a balancing or the extreme opposite of those that basically, sit down and always complain about other things rather than actually doing something. I thought it'd be interesting to have those kind of two opposites in the song. So I like to have opposites a lot also. So in a lot of the lyrics that I write, there will be a certain topic, and then all of a sudden there's something of an extreme opposite that comes and balances the lyrics off in that. So I guess that's how I approach it a lot.
Just close the question. So, and when is the song ready to be on the album? Often it has to do with the deadline. Okay, I'm joking. We will probably not sleep until we feel like everything is ready. So we are pretty exhausted at the end of an album. It's good you guys don't see what we look like. But I think when do we feel like it's ready? Well, of course, by that time you recorded everything, and you mixed and tweaked like crazy. So sometimes we're going to be like mixing and we're like, oh, what if we added this? So we'll go ahead and record like a tiny last thing. But most of the time when you're during mixing is when you decided that it was enough. And even because Yannick is a sound engineer, and I'm also trained a little bit in sound engineering, thanks to him. So it's been great. So sometimes what happens is that we will tweak and do multiple versions. So we are perfectionists, and there's a lot of boxes that needs to be check things before something makes it to the album. So it's tricky. We will likely not sleep. And
maybe for comparison on, for example, on Shards, when Tom Morris was mixing in our studio, when we were still working on the editing of some instruments and adding some, there's some changes that we've made. For example, on one of my drums, drum lines that, once I heard it, I thought, you know what, I think it might be better to go and do this. So you go and fix it, and you hurry up and re-import it into the session or stuff like that. Or if there's, any ideas that come up, right? I mean, if we have the time, we do it. So in terms of when is the song really finished, part of that has to do with schedule, but part of that is we take it to the end, right? It's not like when we start mixing, we say we are done and we're not continuing. We put it behind us. We go till the end, and that's it. Yeah.
Until it just feels like you can't add more without making it less good. Yeah. I mean, you bring it to what you think is the best. Yeah.
So do we go to a contest question?
Yes, maybe we can remind the rules, not the rules, but the directions.
Yes. Yeah.
In case some people
just in case some people join. So for the contest, we ask the question, and you can answer in the YouTube live chat. When we give the question number, when you give the answer, just type question number or whatever and give your answer, so we know which answer that goes to.
All the questions have been posted in the chat, so if you guys just join, you can still find the questions in there.
Yeah. And you get more points for answering first, right? So answer quickly but accurately. So all right.
No pressure.
I think you have the next one, Julie.
Okay. Oh yeah. I get all the fun habits. During tours, during tours or tight video schedules, who tends to have a cigarette and a coffee as breakfast on tour or during tight video schedules? That was question 6.
Yep. All right, next question.
Next question. Maria asks, do you have discarded material? Do you have any plans to publish it, like extra songs in special editions?
I think that's something that Julie and I had discussed a bit for the next album, actually, is to have maybe a song or two that would be unreleased. We do not have that for Shards, and we do not have that for Threads, as far as I can remember. There's actually 2 songs.
Yeah.
There's 2 songs that we had on Threads that not on Threads, on Shards of Light, that we thought, we'd like to work on these a little bit more. So I wouldn't say they're discarded. Yeah. We're just going to use them for later as we rework them up, because we love them very much. But I think there isn't really anything that just, we put a lot of time in the composition, and we rework until we find a song is good, rather than saying, this is not good, let's start over from scratch. And so that's,
I think there's often, like, during the composition process, like you always have ideas, and my way of remembering my ideas, otherwise, as I said, my memory is not that great. So the only way I can remember my ideas is by recording them. So I have a ton of tiny little pieces of songs on my phone. So basically, there are a lot in there that are not used. But once, as Yannick said, once we start putting everything together, usually it's because we feel like it should make it there. So not a lot of discarded things, maybe unused. Yeah.
I'm laughing because I still see some of the answers coming up there. So, yeah. All right.
Martin Papineau, I have a question. Was your move to the USA for music or for your other fields of work?
Okay. That's a good question also. And thanks, Martin, for asking that. Yes. So I'm originally from Montreal, Quebec in Canada. That's where I was born. I also had some time living in Nova Scotia and in Ontario, but the large majority of my time living in Canada was in Montreal. The course of study that I chose and am very passionate about is engineering and physics. So I did my bachelor's in engineering physics at École Polytechnique in Montreal, and continued in the field of medical physics. So I did a master's at McGill University in medical physics and a PhD in physics in the field of medical physics at McGill University. So when it came time to, looking for work, which I had been, researching a lot in, the previous years, I wanted to work in a company that designs medical scanners. So either CT scanners, MRI scanners, nuclear medicine, and most of that is done in majority in the United States or in Europe. One of the companies at the time was hiring quite a bit. It was in the field of nuclear medicine. So it's a positron emission tomography scanner with a CT scanner put together in one. So it's a hybrid scanner. You get the information of the two scanners in one scan, if you'd like. And so I came to Knoxville, Tennessee in actually it was December of 2002, where actually I moved here, and I've been here since. So it's been several years, and I like it here. So yeah, to answer your question, it wasn't because of music. It was because of the field of work that I chose and very passionate about. So usually, I do several hours, at the factory, working in R&D on the nuclear medicine scanners, designing those, and also, equivalent hours in the recording studio and working on Gone in April, right? So Julie does similar hours as well. I mean, we usually work, about 80 to 100, over 100 hours per week, right? So we always kind of have that double, parallel two career thing going on. And we love it. So it's a lot of hours. We're able to balance both. And, I love it. So I hope that answers your question.
As for me, I don't pretend having what it takes to do two careers like Yannick does. I think it takes a lot to be able to be a professional musician at the same time as doing another job full time. And to me, I pretty much put all my eggs in the same basket in a way. So I'm a musician full time, and so I teach voice and violin and viola, but I also play in symphonies. I sing in operas. So that's kind of where I gave myself more room. So being able to do two instruments, but I don't think I would have had the ability to continue as far as I wanted in music if I had done another type of job on the side. And I really applaud everybody who is able to do full-time both careers like Yannick does. But yeah, for me, I really, as I said, put kind of my eggs in the same basket. I do music full-time, but it requires, as Yannick said, even just doing music in order to be able to do everything that I want to do. It takes a lot of hours. Requires, not recover. Losing my English. Sorry, guys. I'll just continue in French.
Hannah Cabello Velasco asks, what was your favorite band/musician in your youth, and who is it now?
I'll take the first on that. So as I said, I grew up with actually no metal at all. It took me until I was 16 or 17, I think 16, to fall into metal. So before that, I was way more into, as I said, folk and a lot of folk, really, and medieval music. So for me, my artist that I was really listening to a lot growing up was Lorena McKennitt, and I still love her, absolutely. And now I would say, and now, I mean, as I said, my tastes have changed, but I still love her a lot. But I would say now my favorite artist, if it's on the classical world, I would say Andrew Menzi, who's a Baroque violinist that I love. And then in metal, I would say Christina Scabia from Lacuna Coil, because I think there's not a good way of saying it. She kicks ass. That's all. She's a fantastic vocalist, but her presence on stage, her personality, she's herself. And I think she's an amazing example for everybody as well, to just be yourself and not let anybody tell you what to do. I mean, they adapt to every situation, but still always be yourself. So I really like that about her.
Growing up, I guess it depends how far back, how young you want to go. But I guess when I was probably about 5 years old, that was before Slayer released the first album, and all the kind of Metallica and Anthrax. This is like before then, about a year before then, actually. So I was 5 years old, and of course, like someone mentioned earlier, what is more in the media is more kind of like pop music, and that was about the year that Michael Jackson's Thriller was released. Which, being 5 years old and having the video Thriller with the zombies and this crazy, story and stuff like that was, at 5 years old, was really, really cool.
Yannick knows it all.
Yeah. So,
he can.
Till this day, I can voice
lines.
over almost every part in the Thriller video.
It's very entertaining.
And part of the zombie dance also, but
yes.
I won't do that here.
I bet some people want to see that.
Yeah. So I guess if you start around that time, then, I would say that was an artist that had impacted me. But I got into metal, I guess, when I was, 8 or 9 years old. I think that the cassette back then that I remember buying, or actually it was a gift from my parents on Easter. Still remember that. It was Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry, because I love the song We're Not Gonna Take It. And I guess that's what I remember at least being the first either heavy rock or album. But I really enjoyed it, but it was still never heavy enough. So I got into heavier stuff as the years went on. And I remember at choir practice when I was in grade 6, before, Christmas and that at choir practice at church, I had just bought Iron Maiden Somewhere in Time, and I was listening to that between the songs with my Walkman, my cassette at the time. So got to Iron Maiden, and then at that point, it just continued on with Slayer and, the heavier death metal bands that I mentioned earlier. And nowadays, I still listen to a lot of that death metal, right? So we talked about that earlier, and other artists like Leon Redbone. I don't really listen to Michael Jackson anymore, except when it turns into a joke of dancing the Thriller dance, but that's about it. So, yeah. Let's stop talking about that.
There's not even alcohol involved.
Yeah.
Jamie Spence says, let's see if you both agree on this. Out of your videos, which was the most difficult to shoot and which is your most favorite?
Okay. All right. I kind of touched a little bit on this earlier. I think the videos I enjoy the most are the ones that have the most challenging production, right? Where there's a lot to plan, a lot to consider, and where a lot of backup plans are required. For example, Future Line was tricky. It was a 2-mile hike in the woods with pretty treacherous terrain. We had to be very careful. We had one of my friends, Chip, that had the idea of having a cargo net with a pulley system to get the gear actually in the cargo net down a cliff so that people wouldn't have to do a detour with all this gear and being careful not to slip and fall on rocks and that. So, when you have over 10 grand of gear being brought down a cliff, you tend to be very careful, and of course, no batteries in the woods, right? No generators in the woods. So at that particular state park, we were not allowed to have generators. So we had to run all of the in-ears, all of the music playbacks, everything off of batteries for everyone. And when you have a lot of in-ear systems, a lot of electronics, it's not just bringing, 2 AA batteries, right? I mean, you need some sort of battery pack and that. That one comes to mind. As Hope Welcomes Death, the challenge with that one is, of course, as you've seen, we have the aerial dancers, in that video. So beside the fact of having to find a venue that we very much enjoyed and had the style that we were looking for that video, we needed a venue that was able to take the load for those aerial dancers, right? And being able to take that load is not just a matter of looking at it. I mean, you need to have an engineer come and inspect it and look at how the building is designed, and considering the load of the aerial dancers as they're maybe turning very quickly and stopping all of a sudden, right? So, and it's not like every venue is equipped to handle loads like that, right? And is set up to have beams and that. So that was one of the challenges. And I think Empire of Lost, we touched on that earlier in terms of the temperature, the lack of power, plumbing, heating, all that. So that was pretty tricky as well. So at least those are the first ones that come to mind. And I think Jamie that asked that question was with us on one of those videos. So I think he's felt the pain on some of that. So
especially wearing the costume.
Oh, wearing the costume too. Yes.
So for me, what I enjoy in the preparation of these videos, my role is completely different. If I was doing Yannick's work of organizing everything, thinking about all the material and everything, it would be a fiasco. So I'm so happy he's there taking that out of my hands. My role in the videos is more the mise en scène is staging, staging. So and also often
Costumes.
Training the costumes, training. Yeah. So basically, it's the whole like storytelling side. Yannick and I write the songs already dictate what is happening and everything, but how you're going to stage it to make it into a convincing story. And to me, because I've studied in opera, that's something that we learn. We have acting classes. We also have where Kayla and I studied. We had an amazing acting teacher that also like made us stage things. So he really staged things, stage operas or plays or scenes. So that really made a difference, and that really like gave me the skills to be able to do this. So often I'm the one who's going to say, okay, we're going to have these props, and just looking for props, like in As Hope Welcomes Death, we needed everything to be in a certain time period. And then you're like, oh, he's going to be injured. He's going to have that dripping bag thing, IV. And then I'm like, oh, shoot. In the 40s, they didn't have a bag with dripping IV. It was a bottle, and then you need to find this on eBay somewhere, Etsy, or so it's a lot. Or just finding the uniforms for this.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Yeah, finding the uniforms for the soldiers. I mean, most of these uniforms that were worn by the actors are actually like real uniforms that were worn during World War II. So these are all things that I actually enjoy doing, putting this together. So for me, a lot of how I'm going to perceive which one is my favorite is in terms of the acting, in terms of the story, how we got this together, if it worked well or not. I should not have said how it works or not, because I'm always super proud of all our actors and everybody who I'm super happy with all the performances. So, but also the way it's filmed, sometimes it will give you. There's going to be like a certain aesthetic, or like, I don't know how to explain that. You're going to get a feeling from that video when you watch it, and this is Thomas and Laurie's work, filming the videos. So there's a lot that comes into it. So for me, I think I really have two that are my favorite. And I think it's If You Join Me, because I did not even have time in this, because we had so much to do. I did not have time to really rehearse with the actors like we usually do. But Peter and James were the main actors, and they did fantastic. They like improvised their way into the story. Like they read the story, they knew what was going on, but like a lot of what you see is just them being great friends and amazing actors and just going into it. Like we had the scene and everything written down, but we didn't have the time to rehearse, and that's a huge part. So I think If You Join Me is one of my favorite, and As Hope Welcomes Death, because of, I think, the way it all came together. I think there's sensitivity Is it how you would say that?
I guess, yeah.
And there's something that really gets you in it. And I think a lot of this also has to do not only with all our actors that work tremendously well, and also the aerial dancers, but also a lot comes to Thomas and how he filmed it and how he also saw the story, but told it in his way with the camera. So
yeah, I think everyone has their own role and view on it. So in terms of what's your favorite or what's the most challenging and all that, I mean, my most challenging video might not be Julie's most challenging video because we deal with completely different things, right? So yeah. Do we go to a contest question? Okay. So I guess now we're getting to the maybe slightly harder questions. So let's see for this one. This is question 7. So again, if you know the answer, just type it in the live chat. So question 7, the first show that was ever booked for the band was for a 3-day festival in Bangalore, India, in Asia. Gone in April had a co-headlining spot along with which well-known nuclear blast band? So we'll see what the answers are for that. All right, cool.
Speaking of world travel, we have Miguel Cepeda asks if you are going to be going to Mexico anytime soon, and Bruce Bomber wants to know if you have plans to do anything in Russia.
Yeah. So we would love to play in both of those countries. Of course, we're closer to Mexico than Russia, which might make that a little bit easier. But as you've probably noticed until now in our answers, I like to challenge ourselves and do crazy things. So getting the team to Russia would be something absolutely amazing. Also, that's something I would love to do.
And Mexico, we've heard so much.
Yeah, Mexico. We know we have a lot of fans in Mexico also. I mean, we've traveled to Mexico not for music related activities, and loved it there and loved the people and the environment. And I've never been to Russia, which is a reason I would like to go. Yeah. But that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yannick, are there any techniques that you use to fight fatigue during live shows?
No, I think the back in the Quo Vadis days, I think, and I haven't been doing that since, but I usually had, I think they were called Power Bar, Power Aid. There was kind of like they'd had like 3 steps, step 1, 2, and 3 that they had. What's glucid in English?
Glucid.
Carbs, I guess. Yeah, I guess they're carbs. Yeah. Before the concert, I would usually take a few sips of an energy drink, just for the reason that because there's a lot to handle before a concert, we don't always have the time to fully, prepare and do our warm up for enough time. So our warm up sometimes can be very, very quick. Having a few sips of an energy drink. We'll do it. And during, I used to have those kind of little pouches of, carbs made, I think it was by Power Bar. But I've stopped doing that. Actually, I haven't thought about that. That's an interesting question. So I think most of the training to prevent fatigue is getting prepared ahead of time, right? So for a drummer of the style of music that we play, you need to be in physical shape. So I think a lot of that is getting prepared ahead of time to not have issues during the concert. I think the times that I do have issues is if I start getting sick and we're on tour and or we have a show or something, and you have to play. You're not going to cancel a show because of sniffles. So those are a little bit harder. Yeah. So those may be a little bit challenging and might feel tired, but that's not because of the condition that my body's in terms of exercise, and that it's just not feeling well. But I think the preparation is ahead of time to kind of eat well and have a lot of water and just doing a lot of exercise to be ready for that physical, requirement. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some shows that I've done in the past that were an hour and a half of playing death metal music. So, towards the end, you start getting tired. But, after the show, after a 1.5 hour show, a headlining slot, I still take down the drum kit and put all the drums in their cases, and
With some help, right?
oh
With some
yes,
help.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, it's just a matter of keeping up the energy, and that's it. Yeah.
I will say that Yannick is one of the most energetic person that I know. That certainly helps. He's got like that reserve of adrenaline that is really, really big. So he can do a lot before he falls on the ground. It's really impressive.
And there's people at the factory, as I mentioned before. So I work in designing nuclear medicine scanners that say, I shouldn't be drinking coffee because I'm energetic enough as it is. But they still let me drink coffee, and they're still very, nice to me, even though sometimes I could be a little bit hyper. So
I have the feet going.
Yes. So thank you to everyone who put up with me on coffee.
Julie, where did you get the red coat from last tour?
Okay, so that was from Devil's Fashion. They have their own website. I believe they're Japanese. So one little thing is that they mention it. It's quite important, that part. So the sizing is very different. So if you order from the website, check that. I think I was wearing a 4XL. Yeah, so the sizing is quite different, but they have really, really cool stuff on there. I think they're also on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm seeing some answers come in on YouTube, and wow, I'm really impressed by how well actually you guys know the band. Actually, there's some questions in there that, especially the last one, was I thought was going to be a little bit tricky, but really cool. Very good.
I don't want to skip this question because I'm reading the French wrong, and I think you've already talked about this, but Stephen B says, quels sont vos projets pour l'année qui vient?
Yep.
And that's when it's awesome to have an opera singer who speaks multiple languages and can
stumble through.
Very good.
Awesome.
Very good.
If you could understand it, that's all I care about.
Yes.
Okay, quels sont vos projets pour
l'année qui vient?
Pour l'année qui vient. So what are your projects for next year?
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I guess so. As we mentioned earlier, we started working on composition in that for the next album, and touring is a little bit tricky right now to plan those out. So we're staying extremely busy, I guess, with playthroughs, like we mentioned, drums, guitar, bass playthroughs. We're started discussing, a violin and vocal playthrough for Julie.
Mostly violin. Yeah.
And of course, working on the composition of the next album. But it's also when we're looking at the composition of the next album, it's also thinking, where would we like to do a video for the next album, right? So we put a lot of time in researching venues, locations, and that for our videos, and we spend a lot of time on that, and that's why we do videos like at the church in Detroit, and New Manchester Mill Ruins in Atlanta, and a video again in Kentucky that has not been released yet, that you will see soon from the Shards of Light album, that are really cool locations. But we like to be creative and do things that we haven't done before. So a lot of the composition work is also production work in terms of videos, and also working on playthroughs for the instruments and that, because that is a very important aspect to us, to get the playthroughs out to the fans, since they're very interested in the musicians and their composition. Yeah.
I think I'm going to introduce the last question, because we're talking again about videos, and this one is related to that. So question 8. A scene of Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 was filmed at the same location as one of our music videos. Which video? Which one of our music videos?
Yep.
Do you have any plans to record an album with a real orchestra?
Well, I think I would say with a full orchestra, because when you consider a real orchestra, Julie does all of the violin parts, all of the viola parts several times to make it sound like a string section. And then we have a cellist and an upright bass, right? An upright bass has come in. So those are all real instruments and they're played several times. So I think maybe the question would be with a full orchestra with the woodwinds and
So at the moment, no, because of as I said, it's a big venture. It requires a lot of money, and right now we're investing on other things. As the band grows, it's definitely something that I would love to do, and I think many of us would like that in the band. So it's in the goals. It's not. I don't think for very. Not for now, but
I guess the other aspect too is with Gone in April. I mean, we've taken that step in, pushing the strings more up front. I think we have not yet taken the step to have the drums, guitar, bass with the string section, with the woodwinds, with the brass section.
Yeah, that's true.
Percussion and all that being brought. So we haven't taken the step into that kind of direction yet with the music composition. I love that style of music. We just haven't taken that step yet to go with a full orchestra. We've left it at strings just, I guess, because Julie's a string player, can do both, violin, viola, and we end up getting cello and upright bass just to kind of complete, the composition and the frequencies also. But haven't gone for the full orchestra yet, although that would be very cool. Yeah.
I think what Yannick also means is that when you're composing, you're already thinking about mixing, because as you said, frequencies like the bass and the cello, they're similar, they have some of those low ends both. So when you're mixing the album, then you need to give every instrument its little slot, its little niche, and the more instruments you have, the more the mixing is complicated. But you also, as I said, you need to write in function of what you want to hear in the mix. So if we were to have a full symphony orchestra, then we would adapt our writing to make sure that we can hear everything, every instrument. So it would be a different type of writing also. So we haven't gone there yet. I think it could be a really cool project. It's definitely something I'd like to do in the future. But.
So we've actually done that for intros. So Dawn of Time on Threads. That's an example where there's no drums, guitar, bass, that's true. Or contemporary instruments. But we have the full orchestra as an intro there.
We did not record the full orchestra.
Yes, that's correct.
So what we did is there are a few. There's a significant amount of real instruments in there, and there's also samples blended together. So that's what gives you. But eventually, a full symphony orchestra would be awesome.
Yeah.
Since you guys are talking about composition, I have a question from George Power. What kind of emotions do you all feel in the composition on creating something wonderful and unique?
I think that's very beautiful the way you put it. Thank you. I'm going to go first on that. So the emotion of being inspired, I'm sure a lot of you had that emotion. So being in the inspiration is like, it feels like you can achieve anything. It's like that, I can do everything, it's that mesmerizing kind of powerful feeling. That's how you feel when you're inspired. You're like, oh, wow, I need to do this and I can. And it's like, wow. And then, but it's fleeting, as every poet in the world talked about. So it is an amazing emotion. But when you work on songs, there's also a very technical aspect. It's it's work as well. So you get inspired for the melodic ideas. You get inspired by a lot of things comes from that emotion of being inspired, but a lot of things are straight out work. And trying something, it's not working, you trash it. You try something else, it's not working, you trash it. So there can also be a lot of frustration in the process. So you're like, no, that's not working. And then you're there for hours with your instrument and then trying things. So I think there's multiple emotions that come through the process of the process of creation. For me, there's, as I said, that kind of amazing inspiration feeling where you feel like you can accomplish anything, and then there's also like the frustration of, it's been 5 times that I'm trying and it's still not working. Let's put this down and come back tomorrow. Yannick, what are your?
No, I think that was well answered. I don't have anything to add to that. So.
What festival is your dream to perform at?
Well, I guess we haven't played at Wacken yet, which would be very cool. But really, honestly, I guess what I can say to that is, I mean, we've played in a lot of venues, and maybe I can combine that with I think Jay Smoker had a question also somewhat related to that, and which is our favorite venue. One of the in the last tour that we did with Kaji and Helvétie, one of the concerts and performances that we all remember and talk about the most out of several of them was a venue that was actually one of the smallest venues, on the tour. So in terms of which festival or which live performance or where, I think it's yes, it would be cool to play at the festival I mentioned earlier, but in all, I think what we remember the most and what we like the most is a good reaction from the fans, right? So it's not always the biggest venue or the the one with the most lights or the one with the biggest stage and all that. I mean, yes, those are awesome because it gives us more space to jump around and entertain, the people that come to see us. But when we get a good reaction and a good energy from the fans, I mean, that
makes the show.
Yes,
that makes everything.
That just takes it to a whole other level. And I think for me, those are my favorite.
You guys are making the shows. You're making it for us.
Yeah. So those, I think, are my favorite festivals or favorite venues are the ones where the fans are very happy to see us and react and get involved with the concert. So yeah.
So Jay is a friend, an awesome driver as well, who was driving Helvétie's bus during the last tour, and he saved us. I'm not joking. We were driving a huge RV, and I'm the first one afraid of driving anything bigger than my Honda Civic. So he saved us. He told us which roads to take. And
so we had a 38-foot RV on that tour. We were 8 people on it, and Jay was amazing from the beginning to end, always helped us out. And till this day, I have phone calls with him, talking to him about buses and all sorts of questions related to that. So we got to know him pretty well on tour. So the tour would have been completely different without him and his support. So, thumbs up to you, Jay.
So my favorite venue, I think until now, was, I would say, let's just say in the last tour, I think my favorite venue for me was the Gas Monkey.
Yes, the outdoor one.
Yeah. I really loved that stage and like the way everybody was placed, and I think it was a great energy. So yeah.
Bookkeeper asks, good afternoon. Which method did you guys employ in the shows to synchronize well with all your teammates? Did you guys start with the guitars, bass, violin, or all play in the same moment?
Okay, I think so. I guess the way that was I guess the essence of that question is how we all hear each other and play in sync, I guess.
For shows.
Yeah, for shows. So is that it? Yeah.
Which method did you guys employ in shows to synchronize well with all your teammates?
Yeah, so I can talk about the gear that we had on the Helvétie Kaji on an April tour. So what we did is we had this, awesome rack, and within that rack we had the guitar gear such as the XFX and the Kemper, and we had those feeding into a mixer module that would receive those guitar signals as well as the bass signal from the B7K, and had Julie's violin and all of the microphones and the drums. And we had a Pro Tools station that, I had right next to me on that rack on a laptop. So, and we also had in-ears. So what we had is we had a count-in to synchronize, I guess, at least myself with, the material that was in Pro Tools, because as Julie mentioned earlier, when you have, orchestra and several, layers of strings in the music, she can only do so much on stage to get that done. So we have supporting samples that, at the same time that she's playing, or samples as she's singing and she can't sing and do violin at the same time. So we have those going on. So harmonize. Yeah. So then that gets the musicians in sync with the Pro Tools material. And so then we'll hear, like, for example, we all have the in-ear monitors. So we don't use the speakers and the wedges. So we all have in-ears, and every musician that is on stage hears the count-in, right? So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we start. So before on tours or concerts that we had done before that tour, the majority of them, I had in-ears, Julie had in-ears, but not the rest of the musicians. So usually I had a count-in that went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I would give either 4 stick hits or 4 hi-hat hits or something to get the rest of the team that didn't have in-ears all in sync. But which was really cool on the Helvetie Korpiklani tour. I didn't have to get in that count in. We would just start because everyone had the count in their in-ears, which is really great. There's no count-ins, and stuff can just pop up very energetically without an introduction on it. So that was what got us in sync and what was really cool with that tour.
Yeah. Yannick, you have played with a lot of fretless bass players. Who is the best for you till now?
That's true. So there are a lot.
Who's your favorite child? It's back.
So the thing that I could probably comment on that is, I would say each of them have their own composition and playing style, and they are completely different. I mean, Steve, to me, the way he writes is very in line with what I like to hear on bass in terms of composition. We talked about this earlier. He supports when the music requires the bass to support, and he goes way up to the front, and man, he can go way up to the front. I mean, we've, in the song Haven, one of the things that I wanted to do that, again, like I mentioned earlier, when we think of, hey, we've never done this before, we've had songs with guitar solos, but we didn't have an exchange of guitar and bass solos. So Steve can definitely go, to the front and write this amazing bass solo to complement, with the guitar, and do an exchange of bass and guitar solos. And that's, just an example, right? I mean, all the other parts that he's got leads, but not necessarily a solo. I've played with Forest, Dominique Lapointe, and he's also technically very, very amazing. His writing style is very different, right? So, and I've played with Hugo from Beyond Creation, amazing bassist also, and Jimmy Bolduc as well. I mean, these are all, amazing musicians. And I think the important thing, maybe what I would recommend to bands is at least the strategy that I took is, what do I want to hear with the music of Gone in April? And Steve's writing, to me, matches perfectly with that. And, there are other bassists that, are amazing out there. I know the Obscura bassist is also, also amazing, and a lot of other fretless bass players. But I think each of them have their own style, and they're known for that style, right? They're known for the specific style that they have on albums. I know Dominique, Forest Lapointe, and Hugo do a lot of tapping, right? So that is something that they do a lot. And, so I guess I would say, I mean, we asked Steve to play on the albums because he's an amazing composer, amazing performer. And I mean, we've known him for a long time. We get along with him well. He's a super cool guy. And it just works well and clicks well together, right? So,
yeah, I think it's whatever works with what you already have. Like, you need a good completion in terms of the project you're on already. So I think with a different sounding project, you would maybe, have another bassist,
Yeah.
or so it really depends. I think it's as you said, it's very everybody has something that is.
Yeah, maybe another comment I would have is, because I'm a studio engineer, I've worked with, I have the chance to work with a lot of bassists, and I love recording bass. I mean, it's an instrument I love a lot.
And you do a lot of session work as well.
And I do a lot of session work too. But I think what works very well with Steve is, if we're in the studio when he's writing, a bass part for one of the songs, and I look at him and say, hey, what if you tried something that went a little bit like this? If we're shooting ideas back and forth, he just goes and plays it in exactly the kind of way that I was kind of hearing it in my head. And I don't know how he understands what I say sometimes, because I give, hey, why don't you try something that goes, like I try to sing, and of course I sing horribly, but somehow that communication works, and he tends to, kind of understand, and then kicks it up a notch, and kicks it up another notch, and kicks it up another notch. And then by the time that it gets to, okay, this is what we're recording, then it's just crazy amazing, and I love it. So we just have this really good, communication and chemistry in the studio, and we both have a lot of fun recording the bass and doing the composition, and it's just a really cool environment. So I guess that's the additional comment I would have on that.
Patrick Lachance asks, what was the inspiration for the album?
Okay, so while we were writing Shards of Light, and as Yannick said, we usually pick our title a little later, like once, we already have a concept and we already wrote most of the lyrics, is usually when we start looking for the album name. So I will just say it was not an easy year. I mean, it was kind of tricky for a lot of us. It was there was a lot of stuff going on, which I'm not going to go in details, but it was rough. And it's the kind of thing where you're like slap in the face. You're like, okay, I can do this. It's fine. I'll be good. Slap the other side. You're like, oh man, that hurts. Okay, I'll keep going. And it was a little bit like that. And as I said, for many of us, so in the band, and so I think. And at the same time, when you turn on the TV and you listen to news, or like you look at them on the internet now, but anyway, so when you look at the news, what you see in the news is never like, oh, this is wonderful and just happened there, and like, oh, look at this gorgeous image of this part of the world. Like usually it's the bad stuff, and it's good. We need to know it, but often it's kind of the bad stuff that we see. So, and a lot of I think at the moment that we were writing, as I said, we already had some personal things going on, and there was a lot of environmental things as well, and it's really hard sometimes just to stay there and witness destruction and witness violence and just being there and like, oh well, I can't do much about that. Like you do, everybody does their own thing and try to be as good as possible and try to, if everybody does a little bit, it's already a huge improvement, of course, but often you feel kind of powerless. So I think it kind of, the seed was there about seeing all that stuff that is kind of grim, and how can you go through it? How can you keep your integrity and go through this, and how can you continue and just not say I'm done, like how can you keep going? And I think we decided at this moment that we were going to look and through the darkness we were going to find that little tiny light, that hope, that good thing. We said you need to look at all these things to keep going, because if not, oh well, what's the point? So for us at that point, with what was going on in the world, and also with what was going on for us, like having some, as I said, maybe like a little bit of a hard year, it was, let's find everything that is beautiful. Let's find everything that is hopeful. And yes, we do. There's some light, and that's how the title came as well. So.
Oh gosh, that name. Sezi Nowaki to Yannick. Did you take any professional drumming lessons or just self-taught with massive amount of talent?
Yeah, so
That's sweet.
in majority, I was self-taught. I started playing drums in 9 on a used drum kit that I bought from accumulating money from having 7 jobs that summer, cutting grass and, I think it was in 2004, we were in Florida and we were working with Jason. And he mentioned this drummer called Bobby Jerzombek, and I had never heard of him. And he said, man, you got to check this guy out. And by then, I mean, I had recorded drums for 3 Quo Vadis albums, a demo, and I've done, a decent amount of recording. And I checked out Bobby Jerzombek's drumming style and thought like, wow, this is crazy. So I actually contacted him. He wasn't, ambidextrous, yeah. So, composition and style and that is actually phenomenal also. But I really want to learn stick technique from him. So I went to LA and I think we had 2 sessions of 3 hours and learned a lot from him. So I guess there's those 2 sessions with Bobby. And then in 2005, I think I had a few sessions with a drummer called Keith Brown in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's a phenomenal jazz drummer. And I wanted to learn some things. I had maybe about 4 or 5 1-hour sessions with him, something like that. But I mean, Sean Reinhardt, Dave, and I guess that would be it. And I remember, so those, I guess, are my 4 greatest influences on drums. And Steve about that. And Steve said, 4 of them. I thought, God, lucky guy. So anyways, yes, so that's it.
I don't know any. Do you use any pedals?
Second, like I just have time to put the violin there and start singing. When you put distortion in there.
All right. Well, I guess, do we wrap it up?
For spending this noon hour with us. I mean,
some of them are pretty impressive and some of them were kind of funny too. So thank you for participating and for listening. And we look Q&A session. If you have other questions that you haven't asked.
This live, after we're done with the chat. So tomorrow in there we will post the win. Always get those codes mixed up. So so we will actually post the names that that we see in the chat or on Facebook. We'll use the name on Facebook of the people who answered there. So we'll keep both.
Yeah. And Julie's put together the packages to say, all right, which prize are we going to combine with which prize? So our goal was not to have, just per question or anything. So every winner will have quite a few items, right? So it's not just one little. Yeah.
So
5
we have
packages.
5 winners.
Yeah.
As we said, we're working from home, just like probably a lot of you guys, but we keep things going. We are not just staying idle, but
Looking forward to releasing that.
thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.